Once upon a time, in a small village hidden among green hills and quiet rivers, there lived a young girl named Karen. She was not like the other children of the town. Most of them had fathers who worked in the fields and mothers who baked bread, but Karen's world was smaller, simpler, and much harder. She lived only with her mother, in a little hut made of old timber and clay. Though their house was tiny and their belongings few, Karen's mother filled it with warmth, stories, and gentle songs that made the place feel like a nest. Karen was beautiful in a natural, effortless way. Her hair was the color of ripe wheat, and her eyes were as blue as the sky after rain. But beauty did not give her comfort, for she was poor. She had no fine dresses or shining shoes like the children she saw skipping down the village streets. The other girls often wore ribbons and polished slippers, while Karen's feet were trapped in wooden clogs her mother had carved with her own weary hands. The wooden shoes were heavy. They slapped the ground loudly wherever she walked. They rubbed against her skin and made her feet ache at night. But Karen never complained. She knew her mother had worked hard to make them, and she did not want to cause her pain. Still, inside her heart, Karen dreamed of shoes that were soft, light, and beautiful, shoes that would make her feel as if she could fly. Her life grew even more difficult when her mother fell gravely ill. Day by day, Karen stayed by her side, fetching water, cooking what little food they had, and whispering stories back to her, just as her mother had once whispered to her. The house felt colder, and Karen's childhood slipped away quickly, replaced by duties far too heavy for such young shoulders. One afternoon, when Karen returned from gathering firewood, she noticed something unusual on the side of the road. There, resting inside a worn-out wooden box, lay a pair of red shoes. They were not dull or dusty, but bright, so bright that the late sunlight caught them and made them glow like embers. Karen's heart leapt. She looked around, but the street was empty. The shoes seemed to wait for her, as if they had been left there on purpose. She lifted them carefully. They were smooth and soft, unlike her clumsy wooden clogs. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the shiny surface. She pressed them against her chest and whispered, "Oh, you are the most beautiful shoes I have ever seen." When she brought them home, her mother frowned. "Karen," she said gently but firmly, "you must never take things that are not yours. Someone must be missing these shoes. They could be looking for them right now." "But Mama," Karen replied, clutching the shoes, "they were lying in a box, alone on the road. If they were truly loved, would someone have left them there? Perhaps nobody needs them anymore." Her mother shook her head. "Even if that is so, it is not for us to decide. We are poor, my child, but poverty must not make us dishonest. Promise me you will never wear these red shoes." Karen's lips trembled, but she nodded. She could not break her mother's heart. And so she promised. But promises are not always easy to keep. At night, when her mother slept, Karen would pull the shoes from under her bed and stroke them with her fingers. She would imagine herself dancing in them, stepping lightly like a princess at a ball, admired and respected by all. Sometimes she even whispered to the shoes, as if they could hear her secrets. Weeks passed, and her mother's health grew worse. Despite all Karen's care, one cold morning the little hut fell silent forever. Her mother was gone. Karen's heart cracked with sorrow. She sat by the bed, clutching the red shoes, not knowing whether to cry or scream. When the day of the funeral came, Karen did something she knew her mother would not have wished. She slipped on the red shoes. The villagers gathered, whispering behind their hands as they noticed the bright shoes flashing beneath Karen's black dress. "How strange," some murmured. "How disrespectful," others said. But Karen did not hear them. The shoes gave her a strange comfort, as if they were the only thing keeping her upright while the world fell apart. Among the crowd was an old lady in a fine carriage. She was wealthy, but her heart was kind. When she heard that Karen had lost her mother, she looked upon the girl with pity. "Come with me, child," she said softly after the funeral. "You shall have a roof over your head, food to eat, and clothes to wear. You will study, and one day you will make a name for yourself." Karen's eyes widened. A new life was opening before her. She nodded. But the old lady's gaze dropped to her feet. "What are those?" she asked sharply. "Why did you wear them to your mother's funeral? Those are ugly. Take them off at once." Karen's heart sank. "But I love them," she whispered. "They are mine." "Do not be stubborn," the lady said. "I will give you finer shoes, better clothes. But these red shoes, must go." And so, though her heart ached, Karen obeyed. The shoes were taken away, locked in a chest. Yet even as Karen entered her new home, filled with warmth and comfort, she could not stop thinking of the red shoes. Karen's new life began with the soft creak of the great house's front door and the smell of warm bread drifting from the kitchen. The old lady led her down a bright hallway where sunlight lay in long golden stripes on the floor. There were paintings on the walls, sailing ships, fields, faces with steady eyes, and there was a staircase that curved like a ribbon. Karen had never seen such a place. Her own hut had one room and a shelf. This house had rooms that opened into more rooms, like a story that kept turning pages by itself. The old lady showed her a small bedroom with a window that looked over a pear tree. "This will be yours," she said, her voice kinder than her sharp words at the funeral. "You will sleep here. You will study. You will grow." She touched Karen's shoulder, and the touch was warm. "And you will learn to listen." Karen nodded. She wanted to say thank you, but the words tangled. Her heart was a knot made of two cords. One cord was gratitude, the other was the red shoes. The old lady kept her promise. She gave Karen clean dresses and a comb for her hair. She took her to the tailor for a warm coat and to the cobbler for sensible shoes that did not hurt. The new shoes were blue, stitched with care, soft at the heel. When Karen walked, they did not clap and scrape like her old wooden clogs. But at night, when the house grew quiet, she could hear, in memory, the whisper of bright leather, as if the lost red shoes were tapping a secret rhythm in some locked chest far away. She would lie awake and stare at the moon through the pear tree and imagine that the moon was a silver buckle and the stars were tiny buttons, and the sky was a great dark shoe. In the morning she scolded herself for such thoughts and promised to think of spelling and sums and chores. Promises are easier in the morning. Time moved like a careful clock. Karen went to school. She learned her letters and how to shape them into stories. She learned to measure flour and to sweep a floor without raising a dust storm. The old lady taught her to knead dough until it felt like a sleeping cat and to mend a tear from the inside so the outside looked untouched. "Care," the old lady would say, guiding Karen's hands. "Care is love in motion." Karen was good with her hands and quick with her mind, but her heart still had an edge. If the old lady asked her to wear the blue shoes to church, Karen would sometimes press her lips together and say nothing, which was its own kind of no. If the old lady suggested a warm scarf, Karen might leave it hanging by the door and say the day was not cold, even when the wind was sharp. The old lady would sigh and let the scarf be. She had learned that there are some lessons time teaches better than people do. On market days, the town was a river of faces and colors. Sellers called out like birds. Children chased each other around barrels of apples. Musicians played fiddles that made the morning skip. Karen liked to walk among the stalls and touch the fabrics, linen cool as water, wool with the fuzz of clouds. She liked to smell the spices and pretend that the ground under her feet was a great map, and she could choose any road. Once, in the glass of a bakery window, she saw her reflection beside the reflection of a pair of red slippers displayed across the street. They were small and shining, as if the sunlight had made a home in them. She blinked and the image doubled, herself twice, the slippers twice, the longing twice. When they crossed the street, the old lady noticed where Karen's eyes were fastened. "No," she said, a gentle word shaped like a firm door. "We are here for flour, soap, and a spool of thread. Not for red shoes." "They look like the ones I had," Karen whispered, surprising herself by saying it out loud. "The ones that were in the box. The ones you took away." The old lady's face softened and then grew sad, like a candle burned low. "Those were not yours to keep," she said quietly. "They were a test, and you did not pass it. We will not repeat that test." "I didn't fail," Karen said, even though her cheeks warmed. "I only wanted." "Wanting is not wrong," said the old lady. "But there is a wanting that listens to love and a wanting that does not. You must learn the difference." She placed a loaf of bread into the basket and did not look at the red slippers again. Years turned. The pear tree outside Karen's window cycled through flowers, leaves, fruit, and bare branches, and then again. Karen's legs lengthened. Her voice deepened. Her hair, once wild, fell in patient braids she learned to weave herself. People remarked on her grace and her cleverness. They also noticed how easily she could turn stubborn, like a door that refuses oil. If a plan was not hers, she pushed against it. If a rule pinched, she said it did not fit. Her mind had learned many things, but her will had learned to stand on tiptoe and argue with the sky. One late spring, when the roads were dusted with bloom and the bells in the church tower sounded like bright coins falling, the old lady realized Karen's dresses were too short and her shoes too tight. "We must buy you new clothes," she said with cheerful decision. New shoes, too. Your toes need room. Karen felt a jump in her chest. It was not fear and not exactly joy. It was hope, tossing like a little boat in a windy bay. They went together to the street of shoemakers where the smell of leather hung in the air. The cobbler's shop was crowded with boots for farmers, slippers for brides, sturdy shoes for schoolboys, and sober black shoes for Sundays and sadness. Among these stood a pair so red that even the other shoes seemed to step back to give them light. They were not the exact shape of the ones from the box, but they carried the same spell, the kind of red that makes you think of berries and birds and cheering crowds, the kind of shine that makes your own eyes shine. Karen reached toward them with both hands. Those, she said. The old lady followed her gaze and frowned. You may choose shoes you can wear anywhere, she said. We have little money. We will buy one pair only. There will be rainy days. There will be visits to the church, perhaps to funerals. Red shoes are not for those times. Choose something else. Karen set her jaw. If I cannot have those, she said quietly, I would rather go barefoot. She meant it. In her mind the world without red shoes was gray and narrow and full of sighs. The world with red shoes was wide. Child, the old lady said, and the word was tired more than angry. Do not ask the wind to blow you over. Pride is a wind. It looks like freedom. It pushes like a storm. I am not proud, Karen said, though her heart knew the taste of pride like a sweet she had hidden on her tongue. I am only choosing. The old lady studied her a long moment and then nodded, as if speaking to her own thought rather than to Karen. If I refuse you, she murmured, you will learn nothing but anger. If I yield, perhaps the lesson will travel to you another way. She paid for the red shoes. To spare Karen the shock of having only one pair, she also bought a pair of plain black shoes for difficult days. The coins in her purse disappeared like rain in dry earth. They walked home on sore feet because the old lady could not afford a carriage. Karen danced by the hedges, light as a ribbon, while the old lady leaned on her cane. Karen did not notice, or did not let herself notice, the pinch in the old lady's breath. The next morning the old lady dressed for a memorial in the next town. We will go together, she said. Wear the black shoes, please. It is a solemn day. Karen stood in her room with the two pairs before her. The black shoes waited like quiet friends. The red shoes glowed like a dare. Karen touched the black leather with one hand and the red with the other. Her mother's voice seemed to rise from a far place, promise me. The old lady's voice followed, nearer, learn to listen. Karen shut her eyes and felt the pull of two roads. When she opened them, she slipped her feet into the red shoes, pulled her skirt long enough to hide them, and joined the old lady at the door. All through the memorial, whispers moved like mice. Karen felt them nibble the edges of her courage. She kept her skirt down and her chin up. When the people stood to sing, the hem lifted despite her care, and the red flashed. A boy snickered. A woman frowned. Someone touched the old lady's sleeve and murmured a warning. The old lady's face closed like a book. She took Karen by the hand and led her out into the sunlight. I asked something simple of you, she said, voice thin with disappointment. You chose yourself instead. They are my shoes, Karen said, the stubbornness like a stone on her tongue. I may wear them where I wish. An old soldier stood nearby, his uniform faded to a story of battles long past. He had watched the scene with eyes that missed nothing. He stepped closer, bowed a little, and crouched beside Karen's feet. Fine steps for such fine shoes, he said in a tone that balanced praise and play. A dancer's shoes if ever I saw them. He bent his head closer and whispered, so soft the words seemed to land directly in the leather, be bold, little shoes. Be loyal to your own shine. Dance when you are told, and dance when you are not. Dance until the truth comes. He touched the shoes with two fingers, as if polishing them. The touch was light, but it was heavy with something else, as if a thread had been tugged that ran through the world. Karen felt a tremor in the soles, a shiver that climbed her legs like a quick vine. She laughed, more from surprise than joy, and made a small twirl to show the soldier she could indeed dance. The twirl became a turn, the turn became a step, and the step became a hurry she had not chosen. Her feet moved again and again, sweeping her forward. That is enough, she said, trying to stop. Her feet did not agree. Karen, the old lady cried, reaching out. Karen reached back, but the dance pulled her just beyond the old lady's hand. The world blurred into a streak of faces and fences. The carriage horse snorted as she darted past. The church bells flashed and were gone. The road unrolled before her like a ribbon she could not drop. She danced through the square, past the bread seller who shouted and the cat who leapt aside with an offended yowl. She danced down the lane that led away from home, past the oak that marked the edge of the village, past the last cottage where an old man looked up from his hoe and crossed himself. She danced into fields and then into the thin woods, where shadows lay on the path like fallen scarves. At first there was a strange delight, like flying just under the sky. The shoes were nimble. They lifted her from puddles and spun her around thistles and gave her a sense that the world was a tune and she was the chorus. But delight, when it overstays, becomes a weight. Her lungs burned. Her back ached. Her stomach pinched with hunger. She begged the shoes. Please stop. Please. I choose to stop. The shoes chose otherwise. Day slid into evening. The light turned golden and then soft and then gray. Bats stitched the air above her. The shoes danced. A fox watched from the hedgerow with lantern eyes. The shoes danced. Night covered the trees in ink. The shoes danced still. When the moon rose, thin and sharp, the path became a silver thread that the shoes followed, dragging Karen like a kite tied to a stubborn child. She tried to grab branches. She tried to fall. Falling only made the shoes leap and tug harder. She tried to press her heels into the dirt. The shoes skipped on their toes. She tried to undo the buckles, but her fingers were clumsy and the shoes were quick. Please, she whispered to the dark. Please. The only answer was the steady tap 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 of red on earth. At last, near dawn, the path turned stony. The shoes took her through a patch of bramble. Thorns reached like hands. They scratched her ankles, they caught her skirt, they said the word stop in a language of pain. Blood traced thin lines down her shins. The shoes did not slow. They carried her into a shallow stream, cold as the inside of ice. The water numbed her, and in the numbness she found a second of cleverness. She bent, soaked her hands, and in one hard breath undid a buckle. The shoe loosened. She yanked her foot free. She tumbled to the bank and seized the other strap. With a cry she pulled that foot free as well. For a heartbeat she lay panting, both feet bare, the shoes beside her like two small animals catching their breath. Then the shoes stood upright. They stood where she had left them, and they began to dance without her. It was not pretty. It was not cruel either. It was simply a stubbornness turned into emotion, a refusal with a rhythm. They tapped and turned and leapt and circled, as if they had learned only one lesson and would repeat it until the floor of the world wore thin. Karen stared and then laughed a short, shocked laugh that sounded almost like a sob. The shoes did not care. They danced a few feet away, then a few more, circling as if keeping watch over her like two red watchdogs that had learned only one command. Leave me, Karen whispered. Go away. The shoes did not go. They kept their circle, as if she were a fire they could not abandon. She wrapped her sore feet in her skirt and used a fallen branch as a walking stick. Each step hurt. The branch clicked on the stones. The sky brightened, birds began their bright, brave music. She tasted salt and did not know whether it was sweat or tears. Behind her, beside her, ahead of her on the path, the red shoes came. And went, always dancing, as if the ground itself were a drum and the day a long, steady song. She moved toward home because the thought of the old lady's face had become a kind of light, and she needed it. By the time she reached the lanes near the village, she was limping badly. A farmer offered her a ride in a cart, but when he saw the red shoes in the road, turning and bowing like polite devils, he crossed himself and flicked the reins in fear. Karen did not blame him. She balanced on her stick and kept on. A dog barked and then backed away with its tail low. Children ran to see and then ran away again when the shoes danced too close. Word traveled faster than she could. When she reached the gate of the great house, the old lady was already standing on the step with a hand pressed to her heart. Karen fell against her. I wanted to stop, she said, the words breaking in the middle. I did not stop. The old lady's hands, as steady as always, guided her inside. She washed Karen's feet with warm water and tears. She bandaged the cuts with linen and patience. She made a bowl of soup and lifted the spoon when Karen's hands shook. Rest, she said, smoothing the hair from Karen's face. You are home. Karen slept like someone dropped from a great height onto a soft field. When she woke, the room held the gentle smell of pears and soap. Her feet pulsed, but they were clean and wrapped. She thought it had all been a fever dream until she heard a sound at the door, tap tap tap, tap tap tap. The red shoes were there on the threshold, dancing, not crossing, as if the line of the door was a river they could not ford. They turned, and every turn seemed to say, remember me. The old lady came to the doorway, looked down at the shoes, and then up at Karen. Her eyes held worry, but also something like relief. They cannot come inside, she said, softly surprised. Perhaps there are rules to this magic after all. The word magic made Karen shiver. It felt too grand for the sorrow that had followed her feet. For days the shoes danced at the door. If Karen went to the garden, they slid along the path to stand between her and the gate. If she tried the back door, they danced there too. They never touched her, but they stood in her way, turning and tapping, tapping and turning, as if they were not outside shoes at all but her own disobedience made visible. The old lady experimented. She tried to chase the shoes with a broom. The bristles made whooshing sounds but did nothing. She set a bucket over them. The bucket slid to one side as if nudged by polite elbows. She placed a heavy pot on top. The pot began to tremble until it rattled itself off. Very well, the old lady said at last, breathing a little hard. You want to dance? Dance. We will deal with the girl. She closed the door. She sat by Karen's bed. Tell me, she said. Karen did not know where to start. She told the beginning, she told the middle, she told the parts where she had felt big and the parts where she had felt as small as a dropped button. The old lady listened without interrupting. When Karen finished, the old lady took her hand. I am angry, she said, but not at you. Not only at you. I am angry at the part of the world that tells a girl that shine is the same as joy, and I am angry at the part of you that chose shine over love. Both are strong. Only one belongs in a good life. She lifted Karen's hand to her cheek. We cannot undo yesterday. We can make a better tomorrow. But first, you must look at what is true. Those shoes are not only leather. They are your stubbornness-given feet. Karen stared at the door, where the tapping kept time with her pulse. How do I make them stop? She asked. Perhaps you do not, the old lady said. Perhaps you learn to bow where the shoes bow and to stand where they turn, and you go another way. She smiled a little at Karen's confusion. I mean, you cannot push against a door that pushes back. You must find another door. There is always another door. Karen tried. She tried to ignore the shoes, to let them dance while she studied, while she mended, while she kneaded dough. But the sound seeped through like rain. She tried to leave the house to go to school. The shoes spun and blocked the path until her teachers had to come to her. They brought her books and gentle jokes and news from the class. She smiled and thanked them and then stared at the page, unable to make the letters behave while the tapping kept counting her fault. At last, toward evening on the third day, when the sunset painted the pear leaves with fire, Karen sat on the floor by the door and placed her palm against the wood. I am sorry, she said, and the words were a rope thrown from a boat to a shore. She meant them. She was sorry for the first red shoes, for the second, for the hidden feet, for the proud chin, for the old lady's hand reaching and finding air. Her sorry filled her like water fills a cup. The tapping slowed. It did not stop. What now? She whispered. Pray, the old lady said simply. Karen had not prayed since her mother's funeral, and even then her prayer had been a wish with a hole in it. Now she closed her eyes and spoke as if to the part of the world that listens from under everything. If there is wisdom, let it sit with me, she said. If there is forgiveness, let it walk with me. If there is a way to make right what I have bent, show me the road. She felt foolish and then she felt quiet and then she felt something like a window opening in a room she had not realized was shut. When she opened her eyes, the old soldier stood in the doorway between her and the shoes. She could not say how he had come there. He was simply there, as if he had stepped out of the crack between one moment and the next. His uniform caught the last light and turned it into a story. He looked down at the dancing shoes and then at Karen, and in his eyes was a tired kindness, like a campfire at the end of a long march. Child, he said, and his voice had dust in it and also music. I told the shoes to be loyal to their shine. They were. The fault is mine as much as yours. But I could not have touched them if you had not already invited them with your stubborn heart. He crouched again, as he had crouched before. Magic goes where it is welcomed, he said. You welcomed it with pride. Pride is a key that opens the wrong doors. Karen swallowed. Can you undo it? She asked, not daring to breathe. I can if you can, said the soldier. Magic listens to truth. Do you truthfully want to be free of these shoes? Do you truthfully prefer love to shine? It is not a small promise, child. People say yes to it and then slip. If you say yes, you must keep saying yes, every morning when you wake. Karen thought of the weight of the world when her feet had been moving without her. She thought of the old lady's hand on her hair and the soft bandages on her bleeding legs. She thought of her mother's voice and the word promise weaving through time like a bright thread. She did not need to think long. Yes, she said. I choose love. I choose listening. I choose to stop. The soldier nodded as if she had answered a question he had been asking for a very long time. He touched the shoes with 2 fingers, not like a command but like a farewell. Then go, he said to them. Go where stubbornness cannot hurt. Go where you will be something else. The shoes paused in their turning, as if they were considering a road for the first time. Then they tilted, as if bowing. They began to move more slowly. The red of them deepened, like coals that decide to become ash. They stepped backward, away from the threshold. They danced down the path, smaller with each turn, until they were the size of apples, then cherries, then berries, then drops of paint, then nothing at all. Where they had been, a few bright leaves tumbled in a wind that no one else felt. Silence opened like a door in the house. Karen did not realize how heavy the tapping had been until it was gone. She leaned her forehead against the wood and breathed. The old lady touched the soldier's sleeve. Thank you, she said, with a respect given to someone who had fought not only wars with swords but wars with hearts. He shrugged a little, almost shy. A soldier knows about marching, he said. He also knows when to stop. He tipped his cap to Karen. Keep your yes, he told her, and then he was gone in the soft way he had come, as if stepping into the seam of the world and pulling it closed behind him. The old lady and Karen looked at each other for a long moment. Karen expected a lecture. She expected a list of wrongs like stones laid out on a table. Instead, the old lady opened her arms and Karen went into them. The hug felt like a house that could be carried anywhere. You will have to work, the old lady said into Karen's hair. You will have to mend what you have torn, inside and out. I will, Karen said. She meant it the way you mean it when you have already walked too far in the wrong direction to pretend you are not lost. The next day the old lady found the plain black shoes and set them by the door. Karen looked at them and did not feel trapped. She felt thankful for leather that had not lied to her. She put them on and stepped outside. The air smelled of pears and wet earth. The path felt like a promise kept, simple and steady. When she walked to the market, some people looked away, and some looked too long, and some smiled as if nothing had happened. Karen did not try to guess their thoughts. She bought thread and flour and apples. She said please and thank you and I am sorry where those words belonged. Her feet did not dance without her permission. They took her exactly where she meant to go. At school she worked harder than she had worked before. Pride is heavy when you carry it everywhere, humility makes room for books. She read and wrote until the letters obeyed. She listened to her teachers and to the pauses between their words. She apologized to the class for disappearing and for the whispers they had had to dodge. She did not say the word magic. She did not need to. Everyone has a story that is too strange to tell all the way. At home she chose to notice the old lady's slow steps. She brought the cane before it was asked for. She warmed the water before the winter air could bite. She learned her favorite songs and sang them while they shelled peas. She polished the black shoes on Sunday evenings and put them away like a prayer. When she thought of red, she thought not of leather but of berries, of sunsets, of the warm blush in her own face when she told the truth. Sometimes, walking past the cobbler's shop, she would see a flash of crimson in the window and feel a tiny tug, like a fish testing a line. She would smile at the tug as you smile at a little wind that lifts your hair and then is gone. Wanting, she remembered, is not wrong. Wanting that listens to love finds its proper place like a flower in a well-tended garden. Wanting that listens only to itself grows wild and thorny and climbs over fences it has no right to climb. The pear tree outside her window bloomed again. She opened her window and let the smell in. She thought of her mother and the carved wooden shoes that had hurt her feet but had been carved with love. She thought of the old lady and the coins she had spent to buy not one pair of shoes but two, because her heart liked to be kinder than her purse allowed. She thought of the soldier and his dusty music and the way he had said keep your yes. She whispered, to herself and to the quiet air, yes, and the word fit her mouth and her day and her future. Word by word, day by day, she wove a different kind of shine around her life. It was not loud. It was the shine of floors scrubbed and books finished and meals shared and mistakes owned. It was the shine of a girl who had learned that the softest thing in the world can sometimes be the strongest, a heart that listens. And when she walked, her shoes made the sound of someone going exactly where she meant to go, at exactly the pace she chose, in the company of love that kept time gently beside her.